Brothers in Tech is a weekly podcast focused on personal and home technology, helping provide you, our fellow brothers and sisters in tech, with some information, assistance, and recommendations. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Brothers in Tech here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson. Over to my right is Brian Jackson. We are actual brothers. We are brothers that get together and talk technology on a regular basis. So we decided, why not put cameras in our faces and microphones in front of us and actually do it for a recording? And that's what we do here on Brothers in Tech. How you doing, Brian?
Well, I'm doing fine. And, the arrogance that we had to think that other people would actually want to hear our conversations.
It was unbridled arrogance.
Pretty brazen, right? But that's okay. I mean, the banter, we'll go back and forth with things, which I think is fun. And, people tend to like train wrecks. So, maybe they'll listen and see if this thing goes off the rails. And yeah, that's
Well,
good.
look, Brian, I enjoy talking to you even if nobody else were listening or watching.
Oh man.
Do you believe that?
How come you never did prior to this podcast? What was that?
And how come I'm saying that only after a couple of drinks I've had?
Yeah,
well, there's that too.
Right back.
No, it's been one of those days. So this is a good way to unwind and to talk a fun topic. This is here on Brothers in Tech. What we do is, as a typical show, is we talk about home technology, family technology, kind of more personal technology. We're big fans of technology, but we like it when it works and it helps benefit our lives. And we try every time we get together to talk about one aspect or topic on home or family technology. And today, Brian, I don't think you can get more home technology related than what we're going to talk about today, which is air conditioning or climate control, or kind of how do we manage what the temperature is in our house, right?
Yep.
It's really hot. What's the temperature like at your guys' place? Brian's on the West Coast. He's out there in Oregon. I'm here in North Carolina. What is it right now?
You don't want to know. Today was probably a high of maybe 69.
Oh, really?
It's been,
it's sweltering.
Maybe we've gotten out of the 70s recently. We did have we had a few days, I think about a week ago, that did hit the hundreds, which was tough for us because there's still some people out here, obviously, without AC, and because you rarely need it, maybe for a week a year. But no, it's back to normal now of the nice 70 days in the summer. So,
wow.
And yours, as I remember from my childhood, is the 7 levels of hell or something. What?
It's close. We've been in the high 80s, low 90s, kind of consistently on average. I mean, we've hit a few mid 90 days. Of course, with the humidity mixed in, it can feel pretty brutal outside. So we thought this is a good time of year let's talk about air conditioning systems.
Yep.
Well, and the technology involved in air conditioning. I mean, we'll be honest here. I mean, most people are going to have a very traditional air conditioning system in their house. But what we thought we'd do is talk a little bit about some possible alternatives to air conditioning systems. Well, maybe some newer technologies that people are taking advantage of. That'd be good to know for the future. But also how technology is playing a role in how we control those devices and how we monitor and manage those devices. So that's really what we're going to talk about here on Brothers in Tech today, is a little bit on climate control, air conditioning. I realized when I made the title of this episode, climate control, I just want to make sure we're not talking about climate change. We don't have any theories or ideas on how to fix climate change. I just want to go ahead and get that out in the open.
Yeah.
We're talking about the actual machines.
Episode. Yeah.
We're in the machines in our house on how we make ourselves comfortable. That's all we're focused on today. Although I will say, I think a lot of the things we're going to talk about with technology are going to help a little bit on that idea of saving energy, saving electricity, maybe doing some good for the environment, possibly. Some of the tips and things we'll be talking about. So
how much did you have to drink already?
A little bit. It's been a long day. It's been a long day.
Yeah. So, I think let's deal a little bit more with the selfish climate control.
That sounds good.
The
Yeah.
in-house, let's make ourselves more comfortable, forget about the rest of the world sort of thing today, right? I think
I think that sounds like a
that's
good
the way
plan.
we'll approach that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a good, a good direction to take. Alan, I was also thinking, the number of people that have changed houses recently in the last
Mhm.
couple of years, has changed to another house. Oftentimes, maybe buying a house that had some issues built in, and you have to try to be creative and figure out ways to make it more efficient, to make it
Right.
more useful for yourself. I think this is one of the challenges, right? Is that oftentimes people are buying a house going, well, I need AC, but yet do I want to spend a ton of money on a brand new system? Is there ways of making it more efficient? Is there ways of potentially making it work for your use, as opposed to
Mhm.
wasting a lot of that money and energy that might go into that? So yeah, I think we've got some good ideas to talk about, and certainly some things that
Okay.
have been helpful for me to research a little bit. So yeah, let's dive
Sure.
in. Let's dive in.
Let's get right into it. So let's talk about some of the more traditional air conditioning systems that people may be familiar with, or at least some of the more permanent solutions. Because again, when you get a house or you upfit a house, typically, traditionally, the whole air conditioning system that goes in is kind of more of a quote permanent situation. It's meant to be
Right.
built into the house. It's something that goes into the walls. It's something that goes into the attic, whatever it may be. Starting off, I mean, you've got your most traditional permanent system, the HVAC or the what does HVAC even stand for? Do you know what that is, Brian?
Ooh, is it high volume air conditioning, something like that, maybe?
I'm gonna look that up. That's a good
Yeah,
question. We've
please
always
do.
called it
Yeah,
HVAC. I've never actually understood what HVAC stands for.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
gonna
I
find
just
out
made
right
a
now. Oh,
guess there,
it's
but
heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. That
oh
makes good
crap.
sense. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
can we edit that last part out, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah. See, Shane Flint already knew. He had already
Oh,
typed it up there way
Shane.
before I even looked it up.
Damn it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Shane. Yeah.
yeah,
Appreciate that.
yeah.
Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So we've always traditionally just called it HVAC. And
Yep.
this is what we're talking about. We're talking about the everything that's running through your house, kind of very traditionally. It's all the ducts that are going through
Ductwork.
different parts of your
Yep.
house, typically in an attic or basement, to be able to go into vents into your room to kind of push air into different parts of your room. The idea of an HVAC system is it's supposed to be kind of house wide, centralized in one unit, both an indoor unit and an outdoor unit that's there to control the climate in all your rooms. Now, traditionally, that has always been something where you have one system, 1 degree, one temperature you're setting for yourself. Yeah, there have been newer systems that kind of allow you to split. If you get different units, you can kind of control different zones to have
Yep.
different temperatures in different areas of your house, but it's still the same technology. It's still talking about running pipes and ducts throughout your house to make sure you got air being pushed to all the appropriate rooms in your house, right?
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. A blower system that takes the condenser, um, cool air, sends it throughout. Right. I mean, I've the bigger the house, the more inefficient it tends to become. Right. Which is where people oftentimes will do, as you said, multiple units, which we're talking about fairly sizable amounts of money. Right. You're talking about multiple units kind of controlling different zones. They have gotten certainly more efficient. They're not the same loud device that is constantly running, trying to push things in. But
Mhm.
that particular style of unit is still around, right? It's still there. I think there's been some recent adaptations of looking at maybe roof mounted things that can potentially use rainwater to do different things. I mean, there's a little bit of change there, but these are the things that basically you're not going to put in yourself, right? So it's kind of a little bit on the outside of what this podcast is kind of going for, right? You want to make sure that you have someone who knows this world to be able to give you the power that you need, the efficiency that you need, so that you're not wasting it on certain parts of the house, and then you know
Yeah.
losing everything in every other part. So
So
that's
Brian,
very traditional,
yeah,
right?
Brian, in my previous house, I had a more traditional HVAC system, but it had two zones or two stages, I guess you
Hmm.
could say. We would allow me to control by thermostat two different floors on the house. So it was really kind of nice in that it was using a single system, but using with multiple stages. And that worked out really well. That was something I know that wasn't available, I think, when I first owned a house, many years ago, but became really nice to know was available because that way you could control the thermostat on different
Yep.
floors or different
Yep.
areas and not feel like it was kind of a one temperature affecting the entire house, top to bottom.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yep.
it
So
was good.
that's getting better. Yep.
Yeah. But I will say I think one thing that we're seeing happening right now a lot more with some homes, and especially some homes that are kind of need a more creative use for where they get air conditioning into, is to use what's called a ductless or a mini split system, right?
Yep.
And Brian, I can attest to this personally. I have one of these in my home. So we have a converted attic, an attic that was converted into three rooms upstairs. And when we bought the house, and it was just like a year and a half ago, we bought the house we're in right now. It was an older house. It did not have an air conditioning system at all. So as part of the deal of buying the house, the sellers agreed to finance or pay for having a traditional HVAC system going in on the main floor. We have most of our houses on a main floor, but they also have an attic that was converted into three rooms. They put in a mini split ductless system up there. And this is kind of interesting. I wasn't familiar with it or not as used to it when I saw it a
Yep.
year and a half ago, but we've gotten very, very comfortable with it. So the idea with these ductless mini splits is that there's no need for full ductwork running throughout your house. I mean, it's really just one one pipe or one tube that runs out to an outdoor
Right.
condenser. Here's another example of one inside. But you have the actual outdoor condenser unit, much smaller unit, and it's meant for really heating or cooling a very kind of localized area. It's not meant for doing an entire house. It's saying, hey, I've got this one room, or I've got this one floor, or I've got this one group of rooms that I need to kind of control the climate in a little bit differently from the rest of the house, right?
Yeah. So it's not having to force the air, right, across the entire house to another
Right.
portion of that, right? It's directing it towards so where you normally see on the outside of your house the big fan that's kind of pushing the air all the way through, and then you get the inside unit that's having to push that, circulate the air, right? That's the circulating device right there that you're looking at on the
Yeah.
screen. You have the small unit mounts, close to the ceiling. It's got the ability to be able to be the fan. So it's really kind of taking the efficiency to a little bit of a more effective place, right? Your fan is occurring in the room that you need the fan, so it's kind of
Mhm.
doubling the idea of a ceiling fan plus having the AC, coming in from the condenser as well. So it's really an efficient thing. Now, you may look at it and say, well, I don't want any device like that. I'd much rather have a vent and having the air, and that's of course the for beauty, right? The having the vent is great, but for efficiency's sake, right, or for add-on sake, this is a really nice way. And Alan, we when we were going through the process of looking at houses a while back, we thought and looked into a lot of little tiny home designs because it's just my wife and I. We were looking at kind of small home, and this is exactly what the tiny homes will use, right? It makes no sense to have any ductwork when you only have a small number of rooms, a small number of square footage, but you can have a much more efficient and smaller system, less expensive system. I mean, for $1,000, you could have the condenser outside plus the fan unit inside, and potentially even two of them for that. Right? I think I've seen maybe $600 or $700 just for a
Yeah.
one of each. So it's a much more effective add-on. And in terms of um, the difficulty of installing it, I mean, you are poking holes through your wall because you are having to feed a line from the outside in, but it's much less involved, obviously, than throwing the idea of ductwork throughout your house and your attic and all of that. So
Well, a lot of these mini splits will be rated for how much They can kind of push air out to
Right.
square footage wise or amount of volume of air it can get out there. So again, like you said, it is really meant for a more localized area. It's not meant for a whole house situation unless it's a very small house.
Yep.
And so you really need to kind of be very careful before putting one of these in to make sure, can it cover the amount of square footage that I could use. So for example, the one we have, which is very similar size wise to what you see here, we have a Mitsubishi mini split unit in our upstairs attic, and it will really nicely cool off 2 to 3 rooms upstairs in our attic. 2 to 3 normal sized bedrooms in our upstairs. We
Yep.
leave it kind of in a centralized area between the rooms. As long as doors are left open between the rooms on a regular basis so air can circulate, it does push out air and gets those rooms cooled.
So that's probably
It
what,
does not,
four or 500 square feet, something like
if I had
that,
to guess,
right?
yeah, I think it'd
Yeah.
be about right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Now I've got one extra bedroom for one of my boys that is on the far end of the attic and it doesn't quite reach that. So we're actually having to kind of address what do we do in that situation because his room stays a lot warmer than the rest of the floor. The air from that mini split is just not pushing out quite far enough to reach out to that fourth room that we're
Yep.
really needing it to. Um, the good thing about these mini split systems is that you can get a kind of a multi-zone mini split as well. So you could get different wall units like the one pictured here in
Hmm.
different areas. And depending on the size of the condenser you've got on the outside of your house, you could pipe them together and one condenser on the outside could actually push to multiple units on your mini split system. Again, it's going to depend on what size condenser, what size mini splits you're getting, how much how much how much energy it's going to need to push out everything it needs for those spaces trying to cool.
Yep. Yep.
But it's nice to know that I don't have to go and rig up a whole nother system just for this one room. I could just put a smaller mini split unit in that room and pipe it into the same pipe that's running out to the condenser
Yep.
outside the house.
Yep.
And that
I
works.
mean,
So,
your situation is the perfect situation for these, right? Where someone might be
mhm,
looking at their house now and saying, "Well, I've got a typical HVAC system. Maybe it's a two-level house, or even let's say it's a three-level house, and you say, well, I can typically keep the first two floors fairly cool, but the top one always gets really hot." And then maybe you say, well, if there's a way of turning off even your ducts upstairs and change it to a mini split just for those, and then set up some smart features so it's not always just constantly running, wasting money. You could say this is only going to be on when we're up there, or only going to be on at certain times of the day. It's a way of adding on. Now, Alan, typically people have done the add-on situation for more what we call temporary, right? The portable units, right?
mhm,
The window
yeah,
unit, right? The wall unit, the rolling, room unit that kind of pumps into the window, just like you have there. I mean, those are the add-on ways, and it's certainly much less involved, right, to be able to
sure.
install those, because there is no installation. It's just you know, put it in the window, close the window down on it, and allow it to pull from the outside. So this is the temporary way of doing what the mini split is doing. The mini split's doing it in a permanent way. It's got holes to the outside, and allows it to do much more efficiently, because your system, your condenser, is outside pulling the fresh air and pushing it inside to the fan. This is having a fan on the inside that is needing to be as close to the outside as possible. So the window is a way of doing that. So, um,
And I think that's important to note too, because I know that you can see a lot of um, cooling units that are portable and kind of easy and a little inexpensive and something you just drop in your room. The whole key is those typically you have to put water into and you have to kind of keep up and funnel some water in. And they're really not good for cooling any more than maybe just a single part of a room.
yeah,
This type of unit, this type of portable unit that's actually piped in on the outside, that's how it's working is it's actually, using outside air to kind of help regenerate. And it is more effective than the ones where you just have to kind of keep them filled with water and just those little portable units you may get around as
yeah.
well. Um,
Or maybe not even. I don't know if these days you have to keep them filled with water as much, but you certainly are going to have to empty water out.
Well,
because
yeah,
of the
all the
humidity
water brings
of
in.
those things,
Yeah.
right? And be able to the condenser, the condenser is on the inside. So when your condenser is on the inside and you've got lots of heat built up, and you've got all that, you're going to have the humidity kind of rolling off into a pan. Our parents had this right in their old house, Alan, where they had the
Mhm.
upstairs, which remained super hot. So they, used a unit like this. This was a window unit, and the challenge was how do you get um, the water that builds up, and remember to be able to go up there and do that. I actually had to go up and kind of rig a little, you know, tube system to where it would feed the water straight out the window and drip down the side of their house, as opposed to filling up a container, because they were getting older. They didn't want to go upstairs, every 2 days during the summer to try to empty out the water. So,
Yeah.
there
Or
there was a cheapness
yeah,
about these, but if they would have had the mini split system, it would have been perfect, right? There's
sure.
nothing to maintain. They could have had smart features to it, but that's more expensive, right? This was a less
Yeah.
permanent solution, but it also has some downsides.
Well, one downside is if you have teenagers that refuse to empty out the water on units like this, um, and in some cases you actually start to see mold
Blame it on the
growing in the
teenagers.
water that's in there, then that's a little bit of a problem. That's something you got to deal with as
Mhm.
well. Well, I personally, I've never liked the looks of having a unit like this kind of portable unit with a duct or a vent running out to the window. Just to me, I if I know I need cooling in a room and it's always going to be in that room, I'd rather go with a wall mounted um, mini split system as opposed to something that's just freestanding like this connected to the
Yeah,
window. Because then you also lose some usability on your window. I mean,
right,
the window is not
right.
really one that you can now open up all the way or close and treat it like a traditional window. So, um,
Yep,
but it's good for a portable situation. That's what they're meant for, is that you
right.
could use it in this room. And then after a while, you need to move it to another room or change it up for whatever reason. That's the whole portability of this that you don't have with a mini split
Yeah.
system to work with.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
give you another example on, and this is the same thing with the small units that you and I've talked about before, like the little heater units that you would put in individual rooms. If you only needed a certain number of months a year. So out here where we are, the only time we had one of these in our first house that had no AC, it was an older house. When we decided to move our bedroom up to the top floor, it was a bigger room. We bought one of these.
Mhm.
And the nice part was that during those maybe 2 months that we might actually want to have AC, we had it. We rolled it, over close to our bed, and we had it basically blowing right on us on the bed. So the AC was where we wanted it, only
Right.
where we wanted
Yes.
it. We weren't
Good point.
wasting it for the rest of the place. And then we also had a little closet where the rest of the year we rolled it and stored it away. Didn't
That
need
makes
it.
sense
So
for that.
so
Yeah.
it was kind of it was helpful for us to not install a full unit, but if we could have at that point done a mini split system and then had an efficiency of being able to turn it on and off when it's needed, because we were certainly wasting power during those months. I mean, it was constantly going when we were ever up there. So yeah, this is another option, a less expensive option, a less permanent option. Just realize there are some downsides, right? Condensation is an issue since the conditioner is on the inside. Plus, you've got issues of attractiveness, usability,
Mhm.
floor space, window use. So there's a give and take, right? Less expensive, less
Yeah.
permanent, but it has downsides, obviously.
Now we do have the more traditional window unit, and this is what's been around for quite a while. I'll admit I've never been a fan of the window units either, but I will admit that they have come a long way in some of their functionality, some of their attractiveness, I think, in the window as well. You still lose some of the usefulness of a traditional window, obviously, because this has to stay in that window unit. And it is a large box sitting outside the back of your window as well as some part of it on the inside. But this is where you know you've got a particular room. You don't have the floor space. You don't need a portable unit for it. This is going to stay there a little more. Little, it's still portable. You could still move it to another window, but it's
Yep.
probably meant to be there a little more long term than
Yep.
a true portable unit might be. But
Yep.
functions basically the same way. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Just keep in mind if you're thinking of this, do you have power close by. I mean, if you're talking about
Yeah.
doing something that is not permanent, then of course you're not also wanting to bring an electrician to put an outlet right there. So you got to make sure you have power somewhat close by, so that you're not having to run wires all across your room. You know, I've found that I've had windows that they look great for a great spot for having an AC unit there, but having no outlet close by meant that I was going to either have to bring an electrician in or I'm going to have to run a long cord, which
Yep.
didn't make sense either. So yeah,
Sure.
so just keep that in mind.
So ranging all the way from a kind of a whole house system where you actually have, a company come in and install all the ductwork, all the equipment needed to
Yeah.
run a conditioning system throughout your entire house, to going down to something that's a little more localized, like some of these ductless systems that can really focus in on certain rooms or certain areas of your house. Or you get down to I need to cool this particular room or this particular spot, and I need it to be a little more portable to be able to move it from place to place, or take it up or down as needed based on what the weather is like in
Yeah.
my area. You kind of got the range of options. But Brian, when it comes to doing anything with any of these units and kind of using technology to use them more effectively, there's some technology that can be woven into all of these units, whether
Yeah.
it be a window unit, a portable unit, a mini split, or even a traditional HVAC system. Some ways that we can kind of make the best use of them through technology. So let's talk about some of those options.
Yeah. I mean, Alan, I will say that if you asked me, you know, 30 years ago about things like a window unit, I would have said that's crazy because they're annoying. You turn them on and they're always on, or you turn them on and you got to continue to remember to go back and turn them off and control them. However, now with everything that has started to move towards the ability to be Wi-Fi enabled, or the ability to have programming put in place, it means that these things can be much more efficient in the way that they're running, right? And there's lots
Mm-hmm.
more bells and whistles to these things, which I think makes them potentially more usable, or at least more efficient now for everyone's case. So,
Yep.
imagine I've got a window unit like this, and it's in a place where maybe I don't spend a lot of time in the summer. Maybe I'm not on that third floor, or maybe I'm not in that converted attic that much. But you also know that if you allow these sorts of things not to turn on and not to stay cool, then you start getting all sorts of other problems, right? When the heat builds up too much, then you lose your efficiency with everything else, or potentially you get some pipe issues. We've had some plumbing issues that have come about from things getting too hot and pipes expanding and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to keep a level of control that's beneficial but not waste a lot of energy. So I think that that's
Yeah.
where some things like built-in sensors, where maybe you've got a unit that not only just is on and off, or low, medium, and high, but you now have the ability to have a thermostat, or you tell it you want to keep it at 61, or you tell it that
Mm-hmm.
only turn on when the humidity gets to this level, or you tell it
Mm-hmm.
to only turn on at these times of the day when maybe the electricity is not getting going crazy throughout the rest of the house. So I
Yep.
think that's the most efficient. I would be look any unit that I would buy, whether it's a mini split, whether it's a window unit. At this point, I'd be looking for the ability to control and potentially use sensors, use other information, right? If it's
Yeah.
Wi-Fi enabled, it means that we can go and create some automation with this, and automation allows us to be more efficient. If it's not
Yep.
automated, it means you have to remember to be automated yourself, and we all know that that's trouble, right? So that means when I get
Well,
home, I go in and
yeah.
turn it on, and then I got to remember to turn it off and change the temperature and change the speeds and all that.
Yeah.
That's not what you want to be doing. So
Well, great example. The mini split we have up in our upstairs attic. My boys both live up there, the two boys that are here at home. And it has a remote control with it. It is not a Wi-Fi unit, unfortunately. I wish it was, but it
yeah,
has a remote control with it, a singular remote control. You can set the temperature. You can kind of set it up or down, and once it hits that temperature, it'll stop, and it'll kind of keep the room at that temperature, which is great. But the challenge always is that if at night we want the temperature to be a different level than it is during the day, you have to go in and manually make that remote control adjustment with the unit every single day. Ideally, the unit would be Wi-Fi controlled, which a lot of them coming out now are, where you could tap it into your existing Wi-Fi network in your home and set it up just like you would a light or any other
Yeah.
appliance, where you say, "Come on at this time," or "Turn off at this time," or "Get to this degree and stop," or "Always keep it at this degree," and it will always do it. And you can set different times for those things to happen. That's kind of the really that really starts to make this whole system really interesting. Imagine being able to kind of climate control each part of your house separately. Now, I know HVAC systems, you can zone them or have different stages. Like I mentioned in my previous house, having two of them, but that's also a pretty costly thing that you have to do and kind of build into the
Yeah.
house to have that capability. This gives you, if you have that one off room where it's just this room is always hot, we want this to be cooled a different way, and but we still want to be able to manage it by time and by temperature. That's where having that Wi-Fi or automation capability tapped in is really important. Um,
Yep. Yep.
we kind of go back to our all of our lessons, Brian, about what home networking environment you're using, and that's where you make the decisions on what type of units you get. Because again, a mini split unit, they make some now that are Google or Amazon compatible. I have not come across any that are HomeKit compatible, which is the Apple platform, but I'm sure there's probably ways to do it at some point in the future. Maybe some
Yeah.
ways to kind of hack that together, or maybe there's ones coming down the road, or ones I'm just not familiar with. But I definitely know Google and Amazon, they do have some that will work with that platform right away. Um,
Yeah.
so
So,
making
Alan,
sure you
can
can
I
do
can I
that. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah can I jump in because
Sure.
here's the other piece that I want people thinking about that. So Alan's in a situation where he just mentioned he's got remote control capability with his mini split, and you're also talking about
Yeah.
potentially getting another unit, right? So
Yeah.
you may have another unit that goes right down the hall to work on the same system, the same condenser, but a different control unit, right? It would
Hmm.
also have a remote, I'm assuming. So,
Yes.
one of the things to think about anytime you have a remote control system. So, if you already have something, or you found a system that was so much less expensive because it was remote control only, but not Wi-Fi, there are some other tweaks you can use. You can get something that has maybe an RF blaster, where
Hmm.
that will take a Wi-Fi signal to a box, right? I think Bond is one of these, Alan. I don't know if you've used that before, but I think Bond kind of does its own version of this, like a little hockey puck that sits, that is Wi-Fi compatible, and it then blasts out a RF signal every time that it
Mm.
receives smart controls. So I was thinking, in your
Yeah.
case, if the Bond was able to go through walls, which I think it can because it blasts a much stronger signal, but you could put that in the middle of in between your two controllers, and then set up some smart capabilities where you say,
Right.
attic,
Hmm.
attic, change to 65 degrees, and it knows then to set these two. Or you could say,
Hmm.
attic, you know, so and so is home, which means turn this one on, but not this one, or something like that. If
Ooh.
you've got the ability, and I mentioned that
Yeah.
because I know there's a lot of people, and this is something I'm actually trying to figure out right now. I have ceiling fans in my house that are not smart compatible.
Hmm.
They are not smart units. They even don't have remote controls. But if they did have remote control, I would be able to potentially use one of these external devices to blast the remote control signal from a Wi-Fi device. Um, so there's something to think about, right? If you're someone that has non-smart, or we'll call them kind of dumb systems that
Yeah.
have remote control, right? So they are kind of the previous version, right? The previous smart version, which was, oh, let's add a remote control so someone can do it from a different part of the room. If you've got the remote control capabilities, there are smart devices that will blast out that remote control. I mean, even the remote control that I use for my home entertainment system we've talked about before, right? I have
Well,
that's hub
sure.
that will blast out an RF signal.
And remember, I actually in a previous episode went through a process where I was
Oh, you
using an
did.
RF
That's right.
blaster, a little mini RF blaster, to connect to my projector back behind me, which
That's
is
right.
not
That's right.
Wi-Fi controlled, but I'm able to control it through the RF blaster. All right, so now you got me thinking. The mini split unit I've got upstairs, it will work with
Yep.
a remote control RF signal on it. So I could put up an RF blaster up there, tie it
Yep.
into my HomeKit system, and it'll take a little finagling, but I could do it. And you're right, I
Yeah.
could actually control the mini split unit from HomeKit or any other home networking environment that you choose to. So, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
It is that will take a little work. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say it,
Right.
there's a little work involved in making that
Not
happen. But
easy.
you're
No.
right.
No.
It shouldn't be seen as a complete brick wall if you got a unit that was not a Wi-Fi compatible unit,
Yep.
because there are
Yep.
ways to make it work with traditional remote controls and do that. Um,
Yeah.
Good point.
So again, let me mention if it, so in my situation, so our two situations are slightly different, right? You look
Okay.
at it and say you have a remote, so therefore you need, rather than ripping that unit down and buying one that's Wi-Fi enabled, which would be a lot of money, you could put 50, $75 into maybe a device that receives your Wi-Fi signal but blast out an RF signal. I, however, have two ceiling fans that don't have remote controls at all. So I bought them. I like the look of them. I bought two of them, put them in, but they're only wall control, right? So the wall
Yeah.
switch control. So in my case, I don't have the ability to do an RF blaster. What I have to do, I still have an option, a cheap option. I don't have to rip those down and put a new one in. I can go find the wall control unit, so the light switch,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
change that out for a Wi-Fi light switch, which means now whatever it was controlling, which is the ceiling fan, can now be what I control via Wi-Fi. So, you know,
Yeah.
the key here is that you can turn a lot of these things into Wi-Fi to make them all automated, to make them more efficient. If you already have things in place, you can go back and rework them, right? Whether it's
Hmm.
the switch, whether it's the outlet, whether it's the actual blaster device, you can go
Yeah.
back and switch those
It's
out.
true.
And usually that's under $100 to be able to make that change. If, however, you haven't bought that yet, it is well worth your money, I think, to spend the extra to get the Wi-Fi enabled already. So if I was going to buy a new
Yeah.
ceiling fan now, go spend the extra $30 to be the Wi-Fi unit so that I could control it without having to put in a $50 wall unit, a wall switch,
Well,
right?
and the whole controlling it either through a wall switch, like you said, is great. If all you're looking for is the kind of on and off capability, you just want to turn it on, and then you
Right.
go to the fan and control the speed or anything else there. There's limitations, but yes, it can work. I mean, if all you want is to
Yeah.
be able to say turn on the fan or turn it off, a wall switch will do that if you make it a Wi-Fi wall switch. Same idea on the mini split. Yeah, I can use the RF adapter or to kind of interface with it, but I would need to go in and kind of really make sure every button and command is kind of mapped correctly, and I know all the commands that need to happen to make those buttons work. It's a
Right.
little involved. I mean, I'm not saying it
Right.
can't be done. It
Sure.
certainly can, but it is more involved. You're right. If you're buying something from scratch, check and look, because really the prices are getting a little bit more in line with more non-Wi-Fi units
Yep.
to have Wi-Fi capability in there. And as long as it can connect to your Wi-Fi, there's a way to control it, even if it means you have to get a separate app on your phone
Yep.
that will just control that unit. That's still
Like
better
an automator app or something
than
like
not doing
that, right?
anything.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
I agree. That's why this fan back behind me here, when it was time for us to upgrade the fan in this den, I said, look, I'm not going to buy one until I know I can get one that is a Wi-Fi enabled that will work with my
Yep.
my home setup. And yeah, we had to wait a little bit longer to find the right one, but when we found it, it's so much better. And I don't have to use a switch at all to control this thing. So same idea
Yeah.
with your mini splits, your portable units. These portable units, Brian, that we were talking about, and a lot of them are starting to come out with Wi-Fi enabled ones as well. The mini splits are starting to have them. The portable units are starting to have them.
Mhm.
Even the window units, some of those now will have Wi-Fi capability in them. So
Yep.
just knowing that you
Yep.
could really control on a room by room basis with a schedule and say, I want this room to be cooled from these hours to these hours at this degree. That's the kind of capability you get from that.
Yep.
Now,
No,
Brian,
that's
we were
great.
talking even beforehand, kind of some interesting scenarios you could do once you have any of these units controlled um, through a Wi-Fi or internet controlled devices or system, and that you could actually have them work in tandem with one another, which I think is genius.
Yes.
So imagine you've got a room with a ceiling fan like mine behind me here, but then I've also got maybe a ceiling. Let's say if it was a window unit, or I had a portable unit also here to cool it off. So maybe I want the fan to only turn on when the temperature in the room is a certain temperature. But if it gets to another temperature, I want the the
The
portable
AC to
unit to
kick
switch
on.
on,
Yeah.
or whatever kind of a
Yep.
combination I want to have. Once you get them all built into the same Wi-Fi, either HomeKit, Alexa, or Google network system, you can start to have them interface with one another
Right.
and really create that custom controlled environment for each room that you want. It starts to get kind of fun to think about it. So
Yeah.
there's
And
a lot
talking
of
about
options there.
efficiency, right? As you said, it
Yeah.
if the temperature is between 70 and 80, I want the ceiling fan on. If the temperature is between 80 and above, I want the AC unit on, and they just continue to operate. And if it's below 70, I don't want anything on, right? You have kind of this way of working it. And think about it this way, right? And plus, in addition to that, I only want these things to happen when I'm at home, right? You can
Yeah.
get it so that
Right.
it'll recognize that. And if I'm away, then I want to go into away mode, which means that, I only want this happening if you raise the temperatures up 10 degrees on both of your things or something like that. So there's
Yep.
a lot of ways now we're talking about basically creating our own version of a thermostat, right, Alan? Right. We're
True.
talking about how do we
Yeah.
control all of this, which of course you and I know that there are ways that we can do that with smart thermostats, right? Or at least
Well,
the
and
home built-in system.
let's talk about smart thermostats for a little bit, because I think it's important to make sure people understand where
Yeah.
thermostats now fit into the whole equation of everything we're talking about. Okay. These thermostats, the smart thermostats that you're seeing, the ones made by Nest, the ones made by Ecobee, Honeywell, I'm sorry, all those, they are meant to work with a traditional duct HVAC
Yeah.
system. Okay. The
Right.
idea being that you can basically take a traditional HVAC system and now control it through a smart thermostat. So it's giving smart capabilities to that more traditional HVAC system that most houses have.
I'm
Um,
sorry, Alan. Are you
it takes
talking about the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system?
That's
Is that what
exactly what
you're
I was
talking about?
talking about.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I was
That's
using the
that's
more
right.
common acronym, but obviously we know what those words mean. Um,
Right.
that's what these are meant for doing. So the smart thermostat, for anybody who just hasn't really got into this yet, if you have a thermostat in your home, and as long as that thermostat is a wired thermostat going back into your system, chances are extremely high that you would be able to replace it with a smart
Yep.
thermostat. Now, I say probably just because there are some situations where some older wiring setups on some older air conditioning systems are not going to be compatible with these smart thermostats. You do need to check that out and
Yep.
find out for
Yep.
sure before you invest in it. But the idea being that this replaces a traditional thermostat that was maybe installed with your system initially. It is wired into the wall at the same spot where your thermostat was. It controls your air conditioning system, your traditional HVAC. The difference is that now this is connected to the internet. So not only can you still schedule it just like you could probably with your older thermostat, you have an on and off time or time it happens, but you can schedule it remotely. You can schedule it based on other situations, and you can always see the temperature that you've got anywhere else in the house or anywhere away from the house as well. So it really just adds that whole dynamic capability to your
Yeah.
HVAC system, which is nice. Um, But Brian, even just kind of keying in, let's say somebody has a HVAC system throughout most of their house, like me, but I've got a mini split upstairs. And if that mini split were Wi-Fi enabled, then I could, in theory, say that if I wanted to go in to my home Wi-Fi network and change the temperature on the entire house to 72 degrees, it would change it on the HVAC system, but then I could set up a trigger to also say with that when that happens,
Yeah.
to also make the temperature on the mini split upstairs the same degree. So that's where that when you start to have those pieces that can communicate with each other, you can really start to do some creative solutions there.
Yeah.
Um,
Automation
yeah,
and communication, right, is key here. I mean, I don't know about you, Alan, but I'll never go back to a non-smart thermostat, right? After you get to use it for a while, and I think I'm different than you. I think did you have the Nest or the Ecobee? I'm trying to remember which one you
I had
had
the
previously.
Ecobee. I had the
You had the
Ecobee.
Ecobee previously, yeah. So I had the
Mm-hmm.
Nest previously at my old house. I went with the Ecobee at my current house. I think they're both great. And there's some others. Honeywell has some. Wise has some. Those are two, obviously, that the big players are the Nest and the Ecobee these days. But the ability to spend a little extra up front, spend a couple $100s to have this thermostat up front, and then have the ability. I would say, if nothing else, the ability for me to be able to go away for the weekend, travel, and then remember, oh crap, I left my
Mm-hmm.
AC unit cranking at the same temperature, to be able to go into the app and say, I'm away now. Please change the temperature. Save me some dollars over the next couple of days. Is worth it in itself, right? But
Yeah.
on top of that, both of these, now the Nest is one that is, it is known for as being a learning thermostat, so it has the ability to kind of recognize trends and recognize your actions, so that it starts to really kind of dial in. And I think they did a good job. Ecobee kind of does a similar thing, but it doesn't claim to be as learning enabled. It will recognize home and away if you can set up some triggers. But the beauty is that they're both able to potentially save you money over the long term, spend a little extra money up front, so that you can then set up schedules. And I think schedules are the big
Mhm.
thing, right? If you can set it up so that, we know that when we go to bed, we've already set it at that time. It's going to, chill down like an hour before we typically go to bed. And then it's going to stop chilling down, so that, by the time we wake up, all these things that normally wouldn't happen on a regular thermostat. So I think those are the real keys, and the ability for it to then tell you, here's how much energy you were using on these days.
Right.
You're wasting some energy at this time. Um, you know, take into account, anytime something is connected to the web, it means there's more information it can gather. So, we have it setting up to say, if the temperature outside is a certain amount, then change our system to this, right? Because we're
See,
probably going to be opening
that's
the
yeah.
windows and that sort of thing. Yeah.
That's where I get excited. And I'm going to tell you my frustration here in a minute with my current situation regarding
Yeah.
thermostats. But what gets me excited is this idea that it can now communicate with other devices or other pieces of data. So, for
Right.
example, um, all of our family has iPhones, and our iPhones are able to detect obviously when we are at our house or away from our house. So, the idea that you could, in theory, link the two and say, all right, well, if all of the members of our household are away from our house, go ahead and dial the air conditioning down. Like don't keep it
Right.
the same level. Let's try to moderate it a little bit more. Let's keep it down a little bit lower so it's not using as much energy. But then if it detects that we come within a certain perimeter of our house coming home, it could technically ramp back up the air to the
Yeah.
normal temperature that we would like to have. That's the kind of synergy that you can start to get with other systems once you have a Wi-Fi thermostat and you're using other forms of technology. And then trigger the mini split, trigger the portable unit, other things you may
Yeah.
have in your house as well. That's the fun. You're right. The thermostat works great on its own and does a lot for you. That remote control capability,
Yeah.
being able to access and turn it on or off remotely and scheduling it, but to enter other pieces of technology that you have available
Yeah,
to
that's where
you
it gets super
is where it's
fun.
exciting.
Yeah, that's where it gets
Yeah.
super, super cool. Right. I mean, as you said, Alan, the idea of me being able to not just turn my AC unit on and off, but be able to do some other things, right? I have a small stand heater. I think was one of my picks several months back, where we put it down in our basement that doesn't get heated well. But if we're down there, we want to be able to turn it on, Wi-Fi enabled. We can turn it on before we go down there, via voice, if we're going to go watch a movie or something, and have it kind of warm up. well, technically, I could go in and set things up to say, that will heat when, my remote sensor from my thermostat reaches this point in the basement. It's going to kick in,
Mm,
because that's a lot more efficient potentially than turning on my entire HVAC system for a heater to try and heat, everything through a duct system. So I just think there's a lot of, it does take a lot of tweaking. It does take a lot of dialing in, a lot of fun things that you can do. But if things are Wi-Fi enabled, you have the capability of kind of putting these together with automation, which is
yep.
incredibly exciting. Alan, I'll even mention, you know, you talked about turning your fan on and off. I mean, there are ways of the Ecobee. I know Nest probably has a similar thing, but I haven't looked into their device in a while since I switched over. But Ecobee has little window sensors that says, well, if there's a couple of windows that you typically open, on cool mornings or something, you can set it up so the window sensor, which is like a security window
Mm,
sensor, say, hey, the
right.
window's open. If that opens and stays open for more than 5 minutes, cut off your AC unit,
Shut it
right?
down.
Which of course is
Yeah.
something we
Hmm.
all forget about, right? We go and open up the
Yeah.
window and we're like, oh, it's so nice outside. And then we go, oh yeah, I got to go turn the AC unit off so I'm not wasting anything.
Yeah.
Those are things that can actually be integrated together. So incredibly cool, exciting, takes a lot of tweaking, does take a little bit of technical knowledge in terms of the automation and tying those together,
Yeah.
but possible, which is really exciting.
So let me throw out a little bit of a caveat to some of this. It is a more personal situation, and I am bitter about it. So I'm going to go ahead and just air my frustrations out to the world here. But I came from a house where I did have a really nice multi-stage Ecobee thermostat situation going on. Much like Shane was kind of saying that he's had a 3-stage system in his house. I had 2 stages in my house with 2 different Ecobee thermostats controlling that. It was great. I could say, you know what, I want my upstairs to be about this level temperature. I want my downstairs to be this temperature. So I got very used to it. I wired those up myself. It was very easy to do. But then the house I'm in now, it's a house that was built in the 1950s, did not have an air conditioning system when we moved in. So a new air conditioning system was put in, new HVAC system on the main floor. And the reason it's on the main floor is because we have the basement is a basement cellar that I can access the entire floor from underneath in the basement. So it's really easy for them to run all the air conditioning vents all throughout the house on their main floor from under the basement. So that's where our air conditioning system is. We put the mini split upstairs in the attic because there's really no way to run ducts up to the attic
Yeah.
anyway. So it made good sense. That way there's like, well, we can just put a mini split up there. It'll cool that upstairs. We're all good. The problem I've got, Brian, is that I really want a new smart thermostat put into my house. The challenge is where this company that installed the air conditioning system we have put a thermostat. They put in a wireless thermostat that is proprietary to the actual HVAC system. It's a Honeywell system. There's a Honeywell interface down at the air conditioning system. And this thermostat they put up on our main floor is wirelessly communicating with it. So that means that there's no wires on the wall behind that thermostat. There were no wires to begin with because this house didn't have an HVAC system anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they put a wireless thermostat on the wall, which sounds like it would be nice, but unfortunately, this wireless thermostat doesn't do anything on the internet. It is truly just communicating with the unit down in the basement. I can set the temperature and it controls the HVAC unit down the basement, and it works like a traditional thermostat. The problem is there's no wires. So without any wires, I cannot pull it off the wall and put a Nest or Ecobee or anything else there to make it work. So we were talking a little bit beforehand what my solutions might be. And I think you're right. I think it is possible for me to wire in a smart thermostat down at the unit down in the basement, the actual HVAC unit down into my
Right.
basement. And then we just control everything through our phone or through voice commands if I have it on our Wi-Fi network. There is something a little unsettling about it. We're not having some wall thermostat unit to go
Yeah.
up and see the temperature or be able to manually adjust it that way. That's not going to be the best sell to my family members. I'm going to have to kind of work on that with a couple in particular. But that may be the option we have to take. Otherwise, I'm going to have to find some way to run wires from that basement unit up to the wall where I want to put a thermostat upstairs and make it work that way, which I'm not looking forward to doing that. So um, it's a little bit of my challenge right now, but that may be something we
Hmm.
tackle here in the future with that.
Yeah.
But I'm
No, it's
sorely missing the
tricky.
smart thermostat capabilities for sure.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's incredibly tricky. I mean, you could see why they did it originally, which is a great solution for someone who doesn't have the system in initially, is to be able to do a wireless kind of
Hmm.
controller, right?
It's great.
But I
Yep.
don't think right now Ecobee or Nest have their own wireless controllers. They're assuming that they're
No,
replacing a thermostat that's in a place where you're going to want to control it anyway.
that's
So
right.
you're kind of in a unique place. But I'm sure there's some other unique things you could do, like buying a small screen that is a built into your home automation system.
Right.
Like
Yeah, I
again,
thought
if you
about
were on
that.
the
Hmm.
Amazon, if you were on Amazon Alexa, you could buy a little screen, have that be the one that visually you could probably tweak it so that that's the home screen or something like that.
Yeah, you're right.
But you're on
I'd even
HomeKit,
thought
which
about
makes it a little bit more of a
yeah.
challenge. Yeah,
I had thought at one point, Brian, even getting
putting
like
an old
an
phone.
old iPhone or iPod or
Yeah,
something and mounting
yep,
it on the wall as long as I can get power run to it to stay powered up.
yeah,
Um, and having it there, and it only runs the HomeKit window of just the thermostat controlling the
right.
Ecobee down in the basement. And that basically gives us the same capability that we would have with the Wi-Fi thermostat I've got now, or the wireless thermostat I've got now. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
yeah,
just trying to think through some good options on that, but I'm sorely missing it.
yeah, for sure.
I've noticed the efficiencies are just not there with a more standard thermostat. I mean, again, we have left up to go on vacation and we did not turn off our thermostat or turn it down. And so we were stuck the whole trip. I'm just gnashing my teeth knowing that our air conditioning is
You're just
sitting there
wasting
spinning and
wasting
running
money,
while
right?
we're not there. Yeah.
Yep,
So that's
yep.
that's a big challenge. That is a big project on my plate, is to figure out how to get around that. So I'm going to throw it out to anybody that's watching this on demand later, or has experience in this. Any thoughts or ways, good creative ways to take the place of a wireless thermostat on a wall and make it compatible with a smart home thermostat system of some way, shape, or form. So I am
Mm.
all game to look at those options. But that is a
And I
weekend
would just
project I'm going to have to tackle sometime.
just really quickly, you don't have easy capability from where the thermostat is down in your basement to go wire straight up to a wall.
Well,
That's not
easy,
ideal,
easy is a,
obviously.
easy is a subjective word. I mean, yes,
Yeah,
I could do it. I could find
yeah,
ways to run the wire from the unit downstairs up into
to a
the
wall.
wall and find a place to put them on the wall. It would be on a different wall than where our thermostat is now.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's not an ideal placement for it, but it could be done. So
yeah,
yes, it's
yeah,
possible, but not ideal. And I really don't want to run and do all this work for something that's not going to be a comfortable space for that thermostat to be. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Any chance of
so that's my
running it
challenge.
directly to your desk so that you would be the only one that has control of the thermostat,
Well, that's
right? So
actually
while you are
possible.
sitting right
Yeah.
now, we're talking, right? Yeah,
So I can just have my master control here and just say, yep, I'm controlling the climate from here in this entire
yeah.
house
I'm
from
thinking
right here, my
everyone else
mission
has to come
control
and
setup.
ask you. They have to come and ask your permission to change the thermostat, right?
And probably giving some sort of offering of some sort to just
Oh,
to
of
right,
course,
something to
right,
entice me to follow their request and give them
right,
more air in certain areas. That's nice.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Have
think
you
about
cleaned your
that.
room? Yeah, because if not, then the
No,
AC is not going to turn on. I'm sorry. Yeah.
although my son, who is in the room that is not air conditioned very well at all right now, it would probably have something to say about that. That he's like, well, it doesn't matter if I clean my
I'll
room or
hang out
not.
in your I'll hang out in your room.
My room is still going to feel like 80 degrees upstairs or more. So, yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
that's our challenge. I think I got to deal with his room first, and then I'll try to make it nice and
yeah.
Wi-Fi compatible thermostats in my house. But yeah, I guess the big picture here that we're saying, Brian, is that there are ways to make the air conditioning, the climate in your house a little more efficient and definitely
Yep.
more controllable than there ever have been before. I think the efficiency can come from where getting away from the thought that your entire house has to be controlled by one HVAC system, even with multi stages, that still doesn't quite give you room to room capabilities or give you the ability to
Right.
really control different aspects of your house much. So you do have that capability. I think, especially if people have I'm thinking about like a sunroom, or I think about a room that's like a separate building. Like we have a separate
Yep. Yep.
garage that would be
An
nice to
add-on.
kind of
Right.
have its own climate setup, but doesn't need to have the whole HVAC system powering every single room. These other options, portable units, the mini splits, the wall units, all work really well. And the fact that we can now get them controlled to where we can really fine tune when they come on, when they come off, what temperature they reach at, and most importantly to me, how do we trigger them with other aspects of our house to make sure that we're using them as efficiently as possible. And all that is
Right.
definitely more capable than before. So,
Yeah. No.
yeah.
It's kind of
And
it's
then, of
kind of
course, your
exciting.
thermostats. Thermostats you can plug in even if you don't touch anything on your air conditioning system. You have a traditional system. The smart thermostat can still be a key to turn that traditional system into a much more dynamic and efficient system for you and to kind of cater
Yep.
it more to your needs. I saw cost savings within a couple of months when I had the Ecobee running on our house
Yep.
before, because I knew for a
Yep.
fact that our air conditioning was not running as efficiently as it could have. And it took about 3 or 4 months, but about after that time, I did start to see costs were dropping for our energy bill, even though it was the same. I felt like the same usage as before, and that was exciting to see. So I'd love to kind of experience
Yep.
more of that again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good,
I'll mention two things really quickly, Alan. One,
sure,
the if you depending on the type of house that you have. So I when we moved into this house, we have three levels, but it's kind of like a two levels on one side and one level that's in between. I don't know what that's called, a split house or something like that, but
yeah,
split
mhm.
level.
Split level.
It's split level, yeah. So it's really interesting in that the basement obviously stays cool. The bedrooms, which is right above it, stays a little warmer. The in between, the living room, is kind of an odd temperature. But the thermostat is obviously up close to the bedrooms, and that's where the heat is. And a lot of thermostats are reading the temperature there. So we went with the Ecobee because it came with remote sensors. So you could
Yeah,
put that sensor in another place, and it would take the average and say, "Well, here's what the thermostat is giving us, and here's what your remote sensor is giving you." So we tried initially, we put it down in the basement and said we want the average, and we found out, whoa, okay, we actually like our basement cooler, so we don't even want that in
hmm
the equation. We'll just let it be its own thing. We put one in the living room, it takes the average between the two, which is great. So I do
yeah,
think that depending on your structure of your house, if the efficiency of your AC unit, which we do not, I mean, it's a 60s house, it's not that efficient. So we wanted to really take into account where the temperature was. So having a remote sensor is kind of nice to say, this is where I care about the temperature. Maybe my living room, maybe my bedroom, and my thermostat's in one place, but this sensor is what I really care about. Where that temperature is what I want to dial in. Um, so I believe both have the capability of doing that. I think the Ecobee came with one, which was really great for us. The other thing I would mention is that if you're looking at those smart thermostats, you mentioned that not all systems can handle them, and that is true. There are some that can't, but there's also some additions. Don't panic, right? If you look at it and you find that you are someone that doesn't have the C wire, you have to learn what a C wire is, and you'll have to learn whether or not you have one, and whether or not you need an addition to this smart thermostat, which is basically the power contribution to the thermostat. But they're fantastic. If you've got one and you say this is great, my system works fine, just realize that there may be some cost savings to eventually switching over to one, and I
yeah.
highly advise it if it's possible, because
I
the,
completely
the
agree.
capability of recognizing times where you don't need it to run. Here's another thing, right? We go out on trips. A lot of times when the summer we'll go travel for a couple weeks at a time, and then driving back, realizing, oh, you know what? on my way back, let's an hour out, let's go ahead and tell it to
Mhm.
start cooling, right?
Yeah.
That's one
Yeah.
of those things that's just fantastic when you come back and realize your hot house has now cooled down by the time you got there, but you didn't have it on
Because
the whole time. Right? It was
because we
great.
remember, Brian, the days of, family would go on vacation when we were young. And it's like as soon as you get home, if it's like in the middle of the summer, the
Miserable.
house is blazing hot and you got to immediately flip on all the air conditioning. It takes, a couple hours to kind of get comfortable
Yep.
again. That was
Yep.
always rough, and we can definitely prevent that now. I'm showing up on the screen just because you mentioned those remote sensors.
Yep.
I want people to see and understand when we talk about these little remote sensors that like the Ecobee uses. These are battery powered. They're not
Yep.
wired. You don't have to wire anything. You don't have to hook up anything. They honestly are battery powered, like with a watch battery. You put them in a part of the room that you're wanting it to gauge the temperature of, and it's feeding data back to your thermostat. So your thermostat can say, hey, here at the thermostat, we're at 71. Your sensor in the other room says 74. So if now we want it to say, well, let's set it at 72 as an average
Yep.
between the two, that's what it's going to work as. So these
Yep.
little sensors, I just want people to understand these are very simple, very low, no wiring, no installation needed.
You put them
They
anywhere.
honestly come with the
Yep.
Ecobee. You put them wherever you want, and it starts detecting the temperature from that zone right away. So yeah,
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
cool.
So depending on the complexity of your house, do look into sensor capability. I think Honeywell is another one that has
They do.
really jumped into the sensor capability. I mean, and if your house is somewhere that you have concerns about humidity, the Ecobee occasionally will send us a little text message that says, "Hey, by the way, we noticed the humidity in your house is pretty high right now. Is there a problem with your AC unit?" Which of course makes us panic, and then we realize, well, we've got the doors open and it just
Yeah,
rained, right? It feels humid. But having sensors, remote sensors, again, the beauty of a smart thermostat, the beauty of smart anything that we've been talking about is the ability to use other information, whether that's other inputs from remote, voice, whatever, or the ability to say, if it is going to be really, really cold tomorrow, then go ahead. If you can see the predicted forecast for tomorrow and see it's going to be really cold, go ahead and start shutting down our AC now,
yeah,
right? The day before, because we know tomorrow we're not going to need it. And all of that
that's a
just
great
starts to
example.
really dial in your efficiency. So
Yeah,
I
even
love it. Yeah.
even a listener or watcher was saying that they use it to control based on external temperature. Outside
Yep.
temperature affects
Yep.
the inside. Same idea.
Yep.
Your When it's connected to the internet, it knows what the temperature is outside and it knows what the forecast is for the weather for the next day or so. So let's use
Yep.
that data to better accommodate our house. No need in having a freezing cold house when it's also freezing cold outside or vice versa. So
Right.
you can definitely make it adjust based on that as well. You know what I
Yep.
think we ought to do, Brian? I think this is great. I think we've kind of wrapped up our conversation on this, but I'm seeing the need to have an episode at some point soon. We talk a lot about kind of creating actions and automations
Mm.
where different units can talk to each other. We've talked about it in theory, but we've never actually really sat there and shown building these things out
Step
because
by
I
step.
guarantee you a lot of
Yes.
people probably have the phones or the computers that have the capability of tapping into a Google Home network or an Alexa network or a HomeKit network. I think it'd be a good episode for us to actually pull up the screens and actually say, all right, let's create some actions that use different units and different devices you may have in
Yeah.
your house, and let's make them work together. Because we've just been talking in theory on those, and I think it would be helpful to see how you can actually do it. Because
Yeah, I think that's
there are
great.
some tips and tricks that'd be
That's
really
great.
helpful there. We'll have to do that soon. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that
That's
is
awesome.
air conditioning and climate control and just making yourself a little more comfortable in your house. Again, the technology is out there to make it more of a better fit for your size house, your layout of your house, more finite control in different areas. And most importantly for me is just being able to be more efficient with how we use the devices. And I think we can save a little money. I think we can make things a little more customized to our needs. And, if it helps the environment too, coming full circle to what we said at the beginning, then so be it.
Yep.
That sounds great too.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Brian, if somebody has heard us talk about all this and has some thoughts or input, or maybe fill in on something that we missed, how can they go about doing that with us?
Yeah, send us an email at info@themesh.tv. Tell us a little bit about your, personal climate control kind of strategies. I mean, I can tell you, I'm always open to new ideas. If there's a more effective way of doing that, if there's an effective app out there to control things, to kind of make the system work more effectively, some products that work. You can also go to our website at www.brothers-in-tech.com and see previous episodes. It is a work in progress, but we are getting to the point where we're pretty excited about putting some blog information up there and some of our own reviews. So some of the info you send us may not go right into an episode, but it might allow us to be able to share on the web for others. And so do send us that info, and we
All right.
appreciate your support.
Great. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. Thanks as always, Brian. You did more of the heavy lifting on this episode. I think you did a little more homework. You've done a little more research on this
Surprise,
than I
surprise.
did.
Mm-hmm.
Now you say that, but honestly, the last two episodes, I think I pretty
I
much
know,
carried.
I know. Yeah, you did.
So
Well, I left you hanging one day without even coming, so that was. I think I owe you a few times, but no, this was
it's
good.
all
This
right.
was good. I
It's
mean,
good.
this was good. Anytime I can get on, we can talk tech, and it's something that I'm in the process of trying to figure out in my own house. Then this is a good thing, right? It helps me out.
Well,
Hopefully, it helps some others out too.
all right. Well, we will
All right,
be
man.
posting up some new topics here in the coming weeks, so be kind of staying tuned for that. And as always, if you have any questions, Brian gave you the email address and the web address. Come check us out or talk to us. We love to talk tech with anybody who's interested. So for Brian Jackson, this way over here, Alan Jackson here on the left. Thanks for listening or watching Brothers in Tech, and we will talk to you next time. And
Oh,
I
you're
am
preparing,
dragging
aren't
out
you?
because I have to
All right.
remember to play the closing video. All right.
All right.
Take care, everyone.
Bye bye.
See you later.